I've often called the Monstera Adansonii the ugly younger brother to the Monstera Deliciosa, and on reflection, this is a tad harsh. Sorry pal, it's not you, it's me. I just didn't understand him, you see, so in defiance he kept giving me crispy brown leaves and straggly growth to embarrass me in front of all his friends. Sound familiar? Well, I've got you covered with all the tips you need to transform your Adansonii from an ugly duckling into a beautiful swan, so that you're not ashamed to show him off to your friends and family. I just wish I knew these tips when I was just starting out with this guy all those many moons ago. I'd have a big beautiful plant on my hands rather than this straggly mess that is trying to come to terms with what I did to him. Oh well, at least his offspring is looking grand. I'll show you how I got this guy to look so handsome compared to his ugly father. And by the way, this video is sponsored by Ritual, but more on that in a jiffy. Nothing makes an Adansonii look more ugly than brown leaves. I know tons of you struggle with this yourselves. I see it in the comments every day. Well, maybe not every day, but at least every week. Leave it in the comments if this is plaguing yours now. So what's up with all the brown leaves then? Is he just on a mission to send you into despair? Anyway, it's a surprisingly common issue, and honestly there can be a number of reasons why this is happening. Sorry to not lay it all out on a plate for you, but it's true. The reason this was happening to mine, and I would say this is probably the most likely cause, was because I was leaving him to burn in the sun all morning and not topping him up with water when he needed. The poor fella was dying of heat stroke and dehydration all at the same time. They don't seem to like direct sun on the leaves, which is odd considering he's a plant. I thought plants loved the light. The more the merrier, right? Not quite. Tropical plants, like our friend Mr. Adansonii, tend to hang out under the canopy of the jungle, only getting dappled sunlight in the process. So slap him on a south-facing windowsill, if you live in the northern hemisphere of course, and leave him to bake in the sun, and have brown scorched leaves in no time. I was young and foolish when I did this of course, and now I know better. Young and foolish? You've only had the plant 3 years and you're nearly 40. Well, yes, but a lot can happen in 3 years. I know better now, and thanks for telling everyone my age. Needless to say, I pulled him back from the window and sat him on my fireplace mantle, which is a much darker spot, and the brown leaves have more or less stopped. But that's not to say everything is rosy though. I mean, look at him. Straggly mess, isn't he? The brown leaves went by the wayside and left behind these bare stems. And now he's not growing all that much because he's not in the best light. I just can't win. Let's correct this straggliness now actually. I've tried tying him onto this trellis, but it's just not working. The stems are just too long and he needs to be restarted. Where's my snippers? While I'm doing that, let's have a chat about Ritual, the sponsors of today's video. Now, I live in Sheffield, and as the long-suffering viewers of this channel will know, we're not blessed with tons of sunshine. I'm sure I've mentioned that before. This means there's a lack of good old vitamin D going round. It's hard to get vitamin D as well as other nutrients like omega-3 and zinc from your diet, so I've turned to Essentials for Men, which is a dietary supplement from Ritual. And there's no additives, fillers or colourants either, just 2 easy to take capsules to support my health. And you can have this delivered straight to your door every month, so it's super convenient. I'm using Essentials for Men, which is a multivitamin designed just for men, but they also offer a multivitamin for women, as well as a 50 plus, prenatal and postnatal. So there'll be a supplement suitable for you. They're offering 30% off for your first month, so scan my QR code on screen now or visit ritual.com/SheffieldPlants30 to start today. What do you think? Looks a bit dramatic, doesn't it? Well, the mantra on this channel is that plants always grow back. They always grow back. As with pretty much any vining plant, Adansonii respond well to having all their limbs cut off. It's like they're born again citizens. All the sins of the past can be forgotten about and replaced with the hope of fresh, new, vibrant growth. And if the new growth has something to climb up, then even better. To prove this works, check out the Adansonii in my bedroom. He's loving life, just look at him. The gaps between the nodes on the stems are nice and short, and the leaves are getting nice and big at top. All signs of a happy plant that is getting the right light and love from me. This is actually a cutting I took from the other plant. They look completely different, don't they? Well, it too was starting to get a bit straggly, so I cut it right back, stuck this trellis behind it as a support, and it's never looked back. These plants love climbing up something, but the best tip I can give you is to start this when it's a baby. This way it knows there's something to climb up and starts to use its aerial roots to cling on. Look, it's clung its aerial roots into the wood and I no longer have to tie it on with string. Pretty neat, eh? This is exactly what I want my other one to do now that I've cut it right back. You just don't need fancy moss bowls for your climbing plants, you see. Anything straight and tall will do the job. You'll also notice that the leaves at the bottom are smaller than the ones at the top. This happens with climbing plants. They get more and more proud the higher they climb and like to flex to show off. Daft things. Back to the brown leaves, what else can be causing it? Overwatering would be a good shout. Yes, I know you've heard it too many times before, don't overwater your plants. But what does this actually mean? Surely they get plenty of rain in the jungle and they seem to love life there, right? Yes, this is true, but they're also not confined to a small plastic pot that doesn't allow for good evaporation. Water can drain freely in a jungle setting and the roots won't be sat in waterlogged soil for long. This can easily happen in a pot if you're watering your plant every weekend without checking the soil first. This is another mantra of the channel. Always check the soil before watering. Turns out there's a few mantras, I should make t-shirts. Anyway, it's not really the water that is the killer here. Your Adansonii will happily live in just water after all. Nope. It's the lack of oxygen. Just like you and me, our plants need oxygen to breathe. I know, right? As if they're not needy enough. Without oxygen, these roots will just turn to rot and die. So how can you tell when your plant needs a drink? You get Mr. Sheffield's favourite affiliate link, the moisture meter, probe that sucker and water when it reads dry. Trust me, it's the best way, no more guessing. You can do it the old school way with your finger or even a used chopstick of course, but I find both of those things to be fairly unreliable. So you're probably now wondering why overwatering causes brown leaves. Well, I don't want to get too technical, but essentially the plant is taking up too much water through the roots until the leaf cells can't take anymore and they burst, leaving behind this brown scarring. This is the same with underwatering too. Too little water and the cells become dehydrated until they burst. So water when the soil is dry, but don't leave it too long. And don't stress about watering a bit too early. To properly overwater your Adansonii, you need to keep it in wet soil for a long time. Weeks if not months. Long enough for the roots to rot, so the odd watering too early here or there won't do too much damage. Famous last words. Watering is the lifeblood of plants of course, which is why I dedicated a whole lesson to it in my online houseplant course that is linked in the description. It's got all the tips and tricks you need in one place to keep thriving plants in the home. Go check it out. So matey, you've just cut off all those stems, what are you going to do with them? Not chuck them in the bin I hope, that would be a waste of epic proportions. Turn them into lots more plants that you then have no idea what to do with in your home. Or you can at least give them away as cheap Christmas presents. Propagation is dead simple I promise, you need 3 things, the plant, a glass and some water. Okay, let me hold your hand. Start from the bottom and locate the last leaf node. You know, the bumpy bit where the leaf comes from. Cut just underneath to tidy it up. Go up to the next node and cut just above. Not below, above. This is key. You should have a cutting with a leaf at the bottom and the top. Remove the bottom leaf. And that's it. Pop it into a glass of water. Wait a few weeks for roots to appear. Do this all along the stem until you reach the top. Once you've got roots, pop them into some soil and new shoots will appear in no time. When it comes to potting up cuttings, there is one thing I used to do that I don't do anymore, and it's making all the difference. Before, I would take a bunch of my rooted cuttings and add them all to the same pot to create a nice bushy specimen. This is fine and dandy if you're happy to have a trailing type of planter, but if you want a climber, then stick to 1 cutting per pot. This is exactly what I've done to my bedroom Adansonii, and he's very handsome if I do say so myself. Having multiple cuttings trying to fight for space on this trellis just wouldn't work. It's much better having just 1 centrepiece taking all the glory. Don't get me wrong, full pots of plants can look absolutely stunning, but with climbers it's much better to have 1 statement plant per pot. In all of my 3 years of caring for this plant, I've noticed that they don't do well in heavy soil. I've got the inquisitive eye of Columbo, you see. This plant that I keep referring to in my bedroom hasn't been without its problems. Nope, it's not all plain sailing in this house. A few months ago, I asked Mrs. Sheffield to buy me some compost on her travels so I could repot him, but she brought me topsoil instead. Never mind, I said. I'll try topsoil and add tons more perlite to make it more palatable for him. Needless to say, not a smart move. Topsoil is never good for houseplants. It's just far too heavy and only suitable for the lawn or borders in the garden. Needless to say, it's suffered. Some of the leaves at the bottom turn yellow, a telltale sign that the soil is preventing the plant drawing up the nutrients it needs because it's too dense. I didn't cry about it. I cut the yellow leaves off to keep up the illusion I'm a responsible plant dad, and then set about repotting him into a decent mix. And the yellowing stopped, thankfully. And if you're on the lookout for a decent mix, then check out my link to Cybersoil in the description for a 10% discount off all their products. Humidity for this plant is pretty simple, like it is for most plants. They're pretty resilient and will adapt to your surroundings so long as you keep them in a consistent environment. This just means not sticking them in front of an air conditioning unit or above a radiator, not a recipe for success. Folks see problems with their plant and tend to assume it's a humidity problem, when in fact it's more likely to be a watering or light problem. You can try adding a humidifier to the mix if you live in the desert, but I've never been a fan of them. They create too many other problems in the house. My pride and joy, the one in the bedroom, is settled in its spot away from radiators and windows, and it's pretty happy. That one bit of browning on that leaf is a bit of a concern, but it seems to have stopped spreading now at least. I must admit that this plant was close to ending up on my list of 12 easy care plants that are actually a nightmare video, but really once you understand what it wants, it's not too bad. To see what plants did up on that naughty list, check out the video on the screen now. And thanks again to Ritual for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check them out in the description and subscribe.